In our last build video, which you hopefully have already seen, we took you through how we built this adjustable climbing wall. We'd already been planning a wall and collecting materials for it, but when COVID-19 started popping up around here, we felt like it was the right time to get the ball rolling on this. So we hastily changed our plans and got the last few materials we needed to build it. And good thing we did, because all the gyms shut down, and we have managed to get some pretty good use out of it. And cue the montage of climbing footage. So in that build video, I would say the wall was 95% or so complete, but there were definitely some things that we still wanted to add to it. As the last video also racked up some views, a bunch of questions rolled in with it. So I would like to use this as an opportunity to answer some of those as well. So as the title suggests, we're going to walk you through what we have learned about our climbing wall over the last few months. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So I swear we'll get at the bouldering wall details in just a minute, but my birthday hit right in the thick of isolation, so this is kind of also going to be my birthday video. Yay me, I guess. So what does a birthday in isolation look like? Well, I guess you're about to find out. So here is part one of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah, the ugly. That's me.
What you doing?
Just hanging out, having a beverage, and yeah, I don't know.
Is this what you do every day?
Not every day. I actually still have a job, but based on my isolation attire, I think you'd assume that I may or may not be employed.
Well, the tux says you're working.
It's true.
The Christmas pajamas say you don't.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, it's not like anyone can see past my waist, but I mean, obviously people are now. So I also accidentally looked at myself in the mirror this morning, which was a terrible mistake. I look like a caveman, so it might be the day that I actually do something about this. I don't know. We'll see how the day goes.
I think it's a good look.
You like this look? Maybe
Yeah.
we should keep it then.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
If you're an OG subscriber, you might have caught my last birthday video where I also foolishly decided to do a cringy segment of me getting a haircut. And I tend not to learn from my mistakes, so here is another slightly different one. And speaking of cringy and subscribers, this is a perfect segue for me to slip in the ever-annoying but super important plug to subscribe to my channel. It means a lot and hopefully will eventually help me make more videos. To those of you who already have, thanks a ton, I really appreciate it. Alright, well, happy birthday to me, I guess. Sick. That was awesome. Alrighty, now that we have all that junk out of the way, let's get to the wall. Alrighty, so here it is in all its glory, the one and definitely not the only adjustable climbing wall. And if you followed our Instagram or watched the last build video, this should all look pretty familiar, so we'll just get right into it. What are the goods and the bads of this wall? And lesson number one shouldn't be a huge surprise if you watched the beginning of this video. Lesson one is tighten your bolts, use your set screws, you huge dummy. Now, when we first set this thing, we had a couple of spinners. There's lots of reasons for that. When you're wrenching on the holds, you're pulling the T-nuts physically into the plywood, and that creates space and thus, yeah, spinners. But there's also another reason for that, and that's because of the climate here. Right now, it's like 36 degrees. I'm sweating profusely through this Hawaiian shirt, which I guess is convenient. And the humidity and the heat is causing the wall to swell and condense, which creates space between the wall and the holds, and again, spinners. So your holds have a set hole for a reason on them. Use them, tighten your bolts. It's kind of a no-brainer. But we also managed to kind of turn that into a game/training exercise. So you climb up on the wall with your T-wrench and hand tighten as many bolts as you can before you get pumped out and you fall off the wall. And before anyone asks any questions, yes, we just use a T-wrench. We don't use an impact driver because, like, look at the size of this wall. It's super easy to hand tighten your bolts. You don't need to use an impact driver. And it's a lot quieter, so your neighbors will hate you just a little bit less, and emphasis on a little bit because you still have a giant climbing wall in your backyard. So yeah, I guess that conveniently just flows right into the next lesson, which is setting the wall. You just don't need to do it that much. When we first set this, we thought we were going to be resetting every, 2 weeks. Nope, wrong. We didn't have to. In fact, the same setup we've had has basically been here the entire time. We started setting holds and problems up by color, and then once we used up all of our holds for those colors, we just took what was left over and infilled the wall, and now we have this kind of sporadic, sparse spray wall you see here. If you're not afraid to use different colors, your setup will last you a whole lot longer, and it's actually really fun to kind of just create your own problems on the fly. And every time you think you've come up with all the possibilities and climbed all the problems, you'll find something new to project and do. But yeah, with all of that said, this setup has kind of been played out a bit, and I think it's time that we reset this wall. So in lieu of a birthday party, we're gonna strip this wall and celebrate that way. So yeah, let's just, let's strip this bad boy down to its nuts. There's no bad boys being stripped. The nuts, there's T-nuts on the back, whatever. I think I just need a beer, and we're gonna get going. So yeah, after a super hydrating beverage, it was time to strip down the wall. And there's one thing I want to note as you see this footage, and it's to never, ever, ever, ever take down climbing holds over someone else's head. Because of the angle of the wall, there's a bit of an illusion, and it looks like I'm doing it over top of Laura. I swear she's really far away from the ladder, but yeah, don't ever do that. And I guess there's one little lesson here that we didn't include in our formal list, and it's because we expected it. But the holds went on shortly after painting, but sometimes paint can take literally weeks, if not months, to cure properly, so some of the holds stuck a little bit, but with a tap of the wrench, they came off easy. And I think if you have aggregate in your wall like we did, it makes it less sticky because the surface is a bit more uneven. Anyway, we just finished organizing the holds by color and put them away so they were nice and ready to set for the next time. Alright, so here it is, all naked without holds. It looks weird without holds, but I guess that's just more motivation to actually throw some more back up there pretty quickly. And yeah, that leads me into the third thing that we've learned, which we kind of just learned. We speculated a bit, but it's been confirmed that some of the holds, their pigment does not stay with the UV and the weather. This is the outside of the hold, and there's the backside. So that's the color it used to be. This is the color it is now. So unfortunately, leaving these outside, some of them fade. Well, some of them don't. It's not a big deal. It doesn't affect our climbing, but it just sucks in terms of having colored holds that are no longer the color you want. The other thing I think I'm going to talk about quickly are things we mentioned in the last video that we were going to do, but we hadn't actually done yet. So just to prove that they're done, I'm going to point them out right now. One is that we cut the length of the bolts off so that they were more reasonable, less ridiculous, and no longer a tripping hazard. So evidence, there it is. No longer a tripping hazard. No one can call me out in the comments. It's safe now. The other thing is we've added in the secondary chain. I mentioned that as a backup to the strap, just in case it wore or weathered and eventually failed. There's something else there. If you're a climber, you should know how important secondary systems and redundancy is. So there's ours for the wall. It also has a secondary purpose, and that is so when we're adjusting the wall, specifically downwards, we have a way to capture a distance that's traveled. And that's probably the most asked question from people was, how do we actually lower the wall? Because raising it seems pretty straightforward, you just ratchet it. But when it comes to lowering it, obviously you have to disengage it, and some people kind of didn't see how it was possible. So I'm just going to quickly walk you through how you actually lower it. And to do that, I'm going to get Laura to step in here and come closer, and I'm just going to point out a couple of things here. So right now we have the leg engaged. I've taken out the pins up at the top of the leg, but you can see the ratchet strap's locked here, and this chain's here. Now, when I disengage the strap, now it's completely loose. The chain is completely loose, and yet the leg hasn't moved at all. And the reason it hasn't is because that leg over there is still engaged, and also the way that the wall distributes weight. So there's weight going down with gravity, down the leg, down this leg, into the ground. And then with gravity, you have weight going down the wall to the base, to the ground. So the amount of weight that this single leg is bearing isn't insane. Now, when we built this wall, and you can see in the last video, Laura and I actually rotated and lifted this wall up on its end on our own. So while it's super heavy and you wouldn't want it falling on you, it's not astronomical. The frame is also made of wood and it has some give on it, which you can use to your advantage when you're lowering it by yourself. And that's exactly what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to lower it by myself just to show you how it can be done, and that a single person can do it on their own. So the leg is disengaged. I have this chain here with some slack to capture distance if I need to, and I can just grab this leg. If I want, I can just use my body weight with my hands, or I can use my foot to help lock it. But I can just wiggle the leg and move it. And there I just moved it, let's say 6 inches. That's kind of how you do it. You just have to maybe move it as far as you want, and then you can add more slack into this chain. And then you can take the slack out of the ratchet strap, and you can just move this leg forward and that leg forward, back and forth, back and forth. If you have a partner, it's a lot faster until you've lowered it to your desired angle. Now, right now, this wall is actually at 35, and we're not going to lower it any further. I just did this for demonstration, just to show you again how you would lower it. It's pretty straightforward. And we're actually going to raise it up because we want to try to just change up the pace of things and the angle a bit and try to set some more technical boulders if we can on this wall, and move it from 35, 10 degrees further, up to 25, which is what we're going to do now. So I'm going to leave it as it is, and I'm actually going to ratchet strap the wall and raise it right back up again. So let's just do that right now. Again, maybe this isn't the smoothest way of doing this, but it's relatively safe, and it's also something we've done in a budget. I think if you had some type of wench and it wasn't a freestanding wall, there's a lot better methods to adjust your climbing wall. But this is what we have, and this is how we're going to do it. So again, you can see now that I'm ratcheting it in, I have way too much spool here, so I'm going to actually have to pull it out. Get rid of the slack, re-engage the crank, and then pull it up. Now, I want to keep it symmetrical, so I'm not going to do too much on one side and screw me over on the other side, so I'm going to have to switch back and forth the sides as I raise it back up, but it shouldn't take too long, and when we're done that, I'll get back to the wall. Alright, we don't quite have the wall where we want it to be yet, but I figured one way to show you how the weight is distributed on the wall in a very visual way in terms of load. So I'm going to get down to this leg, and I'm actually just going to lift up the wall from the leg. I don't even see that. I'm literally just using my biceps to lift the entire wall up. Now, I'm not weak, but I don't think I'm that strong. So you can see how the entire wall is raising and lowering with nothing but these puny little biceps lifting it. So when this is all put together, the weight and the way the loads are distributed across the wall means that each one of these points aren't taking a ton of weight. So it's easier to manage than I think people assume it is. I think the people who question how easy it is to raise it or lower it kind of think that this thing is unbelievably heavy. And like I've said before, I'm not an engineer, so anything you build, I take no responsibility for. But there were a lot of design considerations when Laura and I designed this, and we've been throwing our weight on it and hanging off the holds for months and have had no issues with it. So you get my thumbs up on the wall that we built. Anyway, we'll get back to raising it and show you some more details about the wall in just a second. Alright, so we've adjusted the wall to 25 degrees overhang like we wanted, and it looks a lot taller to us. I'm not sure how it reads on the camera, but it definitely looks a little bit higher here. And I guess we're just going to kind of wrap things up fairly quickly because we went and got some food and we lost track of time and we lost the sun. So I think we'll just go through everything else, and if there's anything more, we'll save it for another video. So another thing we thought we mentioned was that we had cut the mat in half. We had a super long gym mat we pulled out of an old climbing gym, and we mentioned in the last video that we were going to cut it and adjust it. So we did exactly that. We cut it right in half. We stitched together the zipper and kept the slider on one side, then we added a slider to the other side and stitched that one up so that we could keep them as pads that you could remove the foam from, just like gym mats, just in case we wanted to in the future. And then we just capped off the open ends, and yeah, that was it. Rotated it, put it in place, put the Velcro in the middle so it all stayed together, and it works perfectly. I think you can see it fits in the space a whole lot better. It almost gives us full coverage of the climbing wall. And another thing it did was allow us, easier manipulation of the mats. We can move them around easier, and when it comes to weather, we can just fold the mats in half and then the more under the wall and, just away from rain and other weather. And with that being said, we also should talk about weather and the tarping system. So on the back of the wall in our previous video, you probably saw we tarped it and we left a lot of excess. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So since then, we've just kind of trimmed it up, cleaned it up a bit, and I attached some bungees to keep the weather at the bottom just away from the wall. And then we decided to add a secondary kind of weather system with a tarp around the outside, and we added in a bunch of snaps, and they're the same kind of snaps you'd see on boat covers or things like that. That way we could attach a tarp that we custom sewed with Velcro in the middle, so that we had this kind of cover that was removable and adjustable, and we could kind of set it however we saw fit, so that we were able to open and close it on the front. The snaps, you could take it apart from the side. It has a lot more flexibility, and it's held up really well, and we're super happy with it. We also sewed on some straps that you could clip around the legs, and when you clip those straps around the legs, it keeps it from flapping in the wind and keeps it really tight. We're hoping that with these adjustments we've made, it could kind of be a little bit more airtight, and it could be like a 3-season climbing wall. I mean, we're in Canada. If you know how much snow we get, there's not a huge chance we're going to be out here in the snow climbing very much. And to be honest with you, if we were to redo the back of the wall, we'd probably just use snaps for that tarp too, because that way we could just take it off to repair it. If we wanted to replace any hardware behind the wall, again, you could just unsnap part of it, get behind it and snap it back on. It'd be super simple and super easy, so I highly recommend that. And I guess that's, I don't know, that's pretty much it. We're super happy with the wall, and I guess that's the question maybe some people are wondering is, are you happy with it? And the answer is yes. If you saw the clips of us climbing earlier, it should be pretty obvious that we've got lots of use out of it, and if we didn't have it, we probably would have gone nuts. Yeah, the other question people might ask, is there anything we might change? And the reality is, the answer is yes. I think there's always room for improvement, and we definitely would change some things. But to be honest, the things we would change, we probably can't, because we're stuck with these size restrictions where we are. So we probably would make the wall about 4 feet wider. And again, we can't because of the deck it's on. We wanted to put it on the lawn, but there's some issues with grading and drainage, and it just would not work there. We've asked our landlord to fix it, but it's been hard to kind of wrangle him. And you might have noticed our deck is kind of in poor condition, and it needs a seal as well. And for the same reason, we haven't been able to do that. So if it's made you cringe, I apologize. It's really not our fault. So the reality is this wall's probably going to stay here. You can't really make it any wider. And I mean, yeah, we're really happy with it. So we're going to leave it off there. And if you have any questions, put them below. I have a feeling we're going to make another video after this because we didn't get around to setting, and there's probably going to be a few more questions. So ask away and we'll check you on the next one. All right, thanks a lot.